Welcome to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out on our captivating historical journeys. Our story begins with a defining moment captured in the first photograph: Gavrilo Princip's arrest in Sarajevo. This event was a crucial precursor to World War I. On June 28, 1914, Gavrilo Princip assassinated Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife, driven by his ambition to unite the South Slavs and his deep-seated resentment toward the Austro-Hungarian Empire. This assassination set off a cascade of alliances and hostilities that ultimately plunged the world into a devastating global conflict. Fast forward to May 1916, when the Grand Fleet, under the command of Admiral John Jellicoe, faced off against the Imperial German Navy in the Battle of Jutland in the North Sea. This monumental clash, one of the largest naval battles in history, involved dozens of warships and resulted in significant losses on both sides. Although the battle ended without a decisive victor, it reinforced the British naval blockade of Germany, severely disrupting German supplies and resources. In August 1914, German troops marched into Brussels, the capital of Belgium, a city of immense strategic and cultural importance. This occupation occurred during a period of rapid territorial changes, where controlling key regions was vital for military advancement. The presence of German forces not only showcased their military might, but also served as a stark message of domination. By 1918, the Red Cross was pivotal on the front lines in France. Members were seen diligently sorting through the backpacks of fallen and wounded soldiers, a task often performed during quieter moments of the war. This essential work helped document casualties and relay news to families waiting anxiously back home, providing a semblance of comfort amidst the chaos. The iconic Reims Cathedral in France, a symbol of national pride and the site of French kings' coronations, endured the ravages of war. Although not a direct military target, its proximity to the front lines made it vulnerable to German bombing raids aimed at demoralizing the French and showcasing German superiority. On the Western Front, an American soldier from the 1st Division, famously known as the Big Red One, is captured in a photograph throwing a hand grenade in combat. The 1st Division played a crucial role in several key battles, providing fresh troops and much-needed resources to the Allied forces at critical strategic points. Meanwhile, along the Vistula River, in Russia, German troops operated a machine gun post in a trench, a strategic location that saw intense fighting. Trench warfare, characterized by constant advances and retreats, underscored the brutal and unyielding nature of the conflict. The Germans' use of machine guns created formidable barriers, making each battle for territory a deadly endeavor. In May 1915, the Lusitania embarked on its final voyage from New York to England. Tragically, just 6 days later, a German submarine torpedoed the ship off the coast of Ireland, resulting in the loss of 1,150 lives, including 14 Americans. The Lusitania, renowned as one of the world's largest and fastest ships at the time, became a symbol of the war's devastating reach. September 26, 1918, saw a U.S. Army 37mm artillery team in action in the Meuse-Argonne region of France. This offensive, part of a series of coordinated Allied attacks in the war's final months, was pivotal in breaking through German defenses, weakening enemy resistance, and paving the way for the eventual armistice. In September 1914, the Battle of the Marne transformed the Marne district in France into a desolate landscape of ruins and mud. The Allied forces successfully halted the German advance, marking the onset of prolonged and grueling trench warfare that would define the next 4 years. This battle not only prevented the fall of Paris, but also established the enduring front lines. Amid the dense Argonne forest, French troops maintained vigilant lookout duties. Their intimate knowledge of the terrain allowed them to use the vegetation effectively for concealment and ambushes, crucial for anticipating enemy attacks and safeguarding the front lines. In 1917, the first troops of the American Expeditionary Force landed at the French port of Saint-Nazaire. Chosen for its robust port infrastructure, this entry point facilitated the deployment of a large number of troops and equipment. This marked the beginning of direct U.S. involvement in the war, significantly bolstering the Allies with fresh weapons and military strength. That same year, 5,000 American soldiers marched across the historic Westminster Bridge in London, arriving in England to join the fight. Their presence provided much-needed reinforcements and a boost in morale for the exhausted Allied armies, injecting new energy and hope into the struggle against the Central Powers. Finally, in Berlin, Prussian soldiers preparing to head to the front received flowers from a woman, a poignant reminder of the personal sacrifices and the human cost of war. The departure of loved ones for war placed an immense emotional burden on families, particularly wives, mothers, and children. Despite this heartache, the war effort became deeply ingrained in civilian life. Communities mobilized to form support committees, sending much-needed supplies and letters to soldiers on the front lines. In addition to monetary donations, civilians engaged in volunteer activities, such as caring for the wounded and providing assistance to families who had lost their primary breadwinners. In one of the most harrowing aspects of the war, U.S. Marines wearing gas masks are seen responding to a chemical attack near Verdun, France. The introduction of chemical weapons marked a grim turning point, heralding the dawn of modern chemical warfare. This development demanded innovations in protective gear, like the gas mask shown in the image. Near Reims, France, a soldier with a gas mask slung around his neck bangs a frying pan to alert fellow troops of an incoming gas attack. The once lush fields around the city, now scarred by trenches and devastation, became frequent targets for these deadly assaults. The soldiers, forced to adapt, devised makeshift methods of warning each other about the imminent threat of gas. Elsewhere, German troops are captured rebuilding a bridge over the Meuse River in Belgium. The bridge had been sabotaged by Belgian forces in an attempt to slow the enemy's advance. Securing vital crossing points like this was crucial for military logistics, enabling the movement of troops and supplies to maintain momentum on the battlefield. One of the most iconic symbols of early 20th century wartime propaganda came in the form of a British recruitment poster featuring Field Marshal Herbert Kitchener, pointing directly at the viewer with a bold statement, "Your country needs you." First appearing in the United Kingdom in 1914, the poster's goal was to inspire voluntary enlistment, as the need for reinforcements grew before the introduction of conscription. The battlefield at Cambrai in northern France was another significant scene of combat, where British troops ran under heavy fire. The offensive was notable for its large-scale use of tanks, aiming to break through the formidable German trench defenses in this strategically important area. Though the initial assault showed promise, the British forces soon faced fierce German counterattacks, leading to severe casualties and a drawn-out struggle for control. In Belgium, an improvised bridge made of a series of boats piled together spanned the Scheldt River in Antwerp. This makeshift construction was a desperate effort to facilitate the rapid evacuation of both the local population and military forces in response to the looming threat of a German invasion. Australian troops disembark in Alexandria, Egypt, on their way to Gallipoli, marking a pivotal moment in World War I. Alexandria was a key transit point for Allied forces as they prepared for the Gallipoli campaign, one of the most significant military operations involving British Empire forces, including Australia and New Zealand. Launched on April 25, 1915, the Gallipoli campaign aimed to secure control of the Dardanelles Strait, opening a new front to weaken the Ottoman Empire, a key ally of the Central Powers. In Belgium, the once majestic Cathedral of Ypres was reduced to ruins after enduring heavy bombardments during the war. The city, located in West Flanders, became a symbol of devastation, as it was the scene of numerous battles between Allied and German forces. The conflict reached its peak in 1917 during the Third Battle of Ypres, also known as the Battle of Passchendaele, one of the war's most brutal and costly campaigns. A barbed wire field near Ancerville, France, reveals the desolation and destruction characteristic of the Western Front. The strategic location of Ancerville made it a constant battleground for opposing forces. Barbed wire, often paired with trenches, became a key defensive tool, designed to slow down enemy advances and inflict heavy casualties. These deadly obstacles stretched across the front lines, particularly in areas of significant strategic importance. Australian soldiers are shown operating a heavy artillery gun during the Battle of the Somme, which took place between July and November 1916. The Battle of the Somme was one of the bloodiest conflicts of World War I, known for its staggering loss of life. Artillery was a crucial component of the battle, used to prepare the ground for infantry attacks by destroying enemy fortifications and weakening defenses. A Belgian machine gun detachment is captured near Halen, Belgium, in August 1914. Alongside them is a draft dog pulling the ammunition cart, a common practice at the time. The Battle of Halen, also called the Battle of the Silver Helmets due to the distinctive helmets worn by Belgian cavalry, was a key early conflict in Belgium's defense against the German invasion, showcasing the determination of the Belgian forces. In Serbia, soldiers took up defensive positions against Austrian forces on Mount Cer, marking one of the earliest major battles of World War I. The Battle of Mount Cer, fought from August 15 to 24, 1914, was a decisive victory for the Serbian forces and a key moment in their resistance against the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The tensions between Serbia and Austria-Hungary were a significant factor leading to the outbreak of the war. In a rare moment of peace, German soldiers are seen gathering at an unknown location during Christmas 1914. Amid the horror of the conflict, this holiday offered a brief respite, famously remembered for the Christmas truce. Along the Western Front, soldiers from opposing sides laid down their arms to exchange gifts and even play football, a brief but poignant reminder of shared humanity during the war. Italian soldiers are pictured taking cover during the Battle of the Piave River, a crucial clash that took place from June 15 to 23, 1918. The Piave River served as a natural defensive barrier for the Italian forces, playing a vital role in halting the advance of enemy troops and shaping the war's outcome in the region. In 1916, the German Navy's fleet of battlecruisers sailed into the North Sea to confront the British Grand Fleet at the Battle of Jutland. Both sides sought naval dominance, and while the battle did not yield a clear victory, it reinforced the strategic importance of maintaining naval superiority. The Grand Fleet's ability to uphold the blockade of Germany had significant consequences, contributing to the eventual downfall of the Central Powers. Lastly, in 1917, U.S. President Woodrow Wilson delivered a historic address to Congress, calling for the United States to enter World War I. This speech marked a turning point in U.S. foreign policy and the war itself, as Wilson articulated the need for American involvement to safeguard democracy and bring an end to the global conflict. His persuasive argument led to the U.S. joining the war, shifting the balance of power in favor of the Allies. President Woodrow Wilson positioned the United States as a defender of democracy and global peace, emphasizing the need for intervention to safeguard democratic values and ensure international security. As part of the massive U.S. mobilization effort, recruits from New York lined up in front of the barracks at Camp Upton in Yaphank, Long Island. At Camp Upton, these young men underwent basic military training before being sent to the European front lines, becoming part of the troops fighting for the Allies. The first tanks were developed to break the deadlock of trench warfare, offering a way to increase mobility across the treacherous battlefields. Though their designs were rudimentary and prone to mechanical failures, these armored vehicles, originally modeled on agricultural machinery, represented a revolutionary shift in military tactics, enabling forces to cross trenches and navigate rough terrain. In Pienne, France, French Captain Georges Guynemer, a celebrated ace of the French Air Force, stands proudly in front of his downed aircraft. After an intense aerial battle, his plane was forced to make an emergency landing in friendly territory. Guynemer emerged unscathed, further cementing his heroic status among the French people. The Battle of Verdun, which raged from February to December 1916, left the battlefield utterly devastated. Deep craters scarred the landscape, a grim testament to one of the longest and bloodiest confrontations of World War I. U.S. Army troops, stationed in the trenches of France, faced relentless artillery fire and the ever-present threat of chemical weapon attacks, all while enduring the psychological toll of trench life, marked by filth, moisture, and constant danger. In June 1917, shortly after American forces arrived in Europe, U.S. Army General John J. Pershing inspected French troops in Boulogne, France. This inspection was a symbolic gesture, reaffirming the United States' commitment to its European allies during a critical phase of the war. Meanwhile, in northern France, the city of Cambrai became a focal point in the Allied offensive, where British forces deployed a large concentration of tanks to break through the German defenses. Despite heavy bombardment from German forces, Cambrai's strategic importance for supply and communication lines made it a key battleground. In December 1914, Scarborough, a coastal town in northern England, was struck by one of the first bombardments on British soil. The Royal Hotel, among other buildings, was severely damaged, shocking a civilian population that had believed itself safe, far from the war zones. The bombardment created a new sense of vulnerability among the British people, revealing that no place was truly out of reach. In the Kiel and Pole Mountains in German territory, German troops prepared for an offensive using mine throwers, a relatively new and powerful technology that allowed for long-range attacks on enemy fortifications. Meanwhile, American troops in France, armed with bayonets, prepared for close-quarters combat, a typical feature of trench warfare. The bayonet charge signaled the start of intense battles in which hand-to-hand combat was inevitable. An abandoned tank and water-filled craters in Saint-Julien, Belgium, reflected the brutal intensity of the fighting in the Flanders region. As warfare tactics evolved rapidly, these abandoned machines and the cratered landscape illustrated the high cost of the ongoing conflict. In December 1917, British General Sir Edmund Allenby entered Jerusalem, marking the capture of the city by Allied forces. Out of respect for the historical and religious significance of Jerusalem, Allenby dismounted from his horse and entered the city on foot, ensuring that his arrival did not carry the appearance of a triumphant conquest. In Niceville, France, French soldiers played a vital role in transporting troops and supplies to the Western Front, ensuring that their forces remained well-equipped for the rigors of battle. Like many towns near the front lines, Niceville was a critical logistical hub, keeping the war effort moving efficiently. A trench snakes through the village of Brabant-Meuse near Verdun, France, transforming what was once a peaceful village into a war-ravaged zone. The construction of trenches and the constant presence of soldiers profoundly altered the landscape and disrupted the lives of its inhabitants. Meanwhile, Belgian troops departed from Brussels to reinforce Leuven, a strategic location on the Western Front. As they defended Leuven from advancing German forces, the soldiers not only contended with fierce enemy attacks, but also faced adverse conditions such as harsh weather and supply shortages, a common challenge for troops throughout the war. During the Battle of Verdun, French soldiers operated the highly regarded 75mm field gun, known for its accuracy and rapid rate of fire. Developed by French forces, the 75 played a critical role in trench warfare, where its precision helped maintain pressure on enemy lines and support infantry during prolonged combat. On May 7, 1915, the German submarine U-139 made history with its infamous attack on the RMS Lusitania. The sinking resulted in the deaths of approximately 1,150 people, including 114 American citizens, significantly influencing public opinion and international relations, particularly between the United States and Germany. The tragedy, which involved numerous civilian casualties, heightened tensions, and was a pivotal moment leading toward U.S. involvement in the war. In 1917, British soldiers marched in formation back to Ypres, reinforcing the defensive lines on the Western Front. Ypres, heavily bombarded and frequently attacked, was a key strategic point that the Allies were determined to defend. Simultaneously, Indian troops from the British Empire arrived in France as part of the Indian Expeditionary Force. Despite harsh conditions, these troops made significant contributions in several key battles, underscoring the global nature of the Allied war effort. In the trenches near Ypres, Belgium, Allied troops gathered around a small campfire, momentarily finding solace amid the devastation of the front. The region was notorious for its relentless warfare, including the use of poison gas. The campfire, a rare reprieve from the dangers of trench life, represented the brief moments of calm that soldiers cherished in an otherwise grueling existence. After a weeks-long siege, German troops marched victoriously through the streets of Antwerp, Belgium. The city, besieged and blockaded, had suffered greatly during the conflict, and its capture brought significant hardship to its residents. The German occupation altered daily life in Antwerp, leaving lasting impacts on the local population. In 1915, two Turkish soldiers took position in a trench during the Gallipoli campaign. This historic military effort by the Allies aimed to capture Constantinople, secure a vital supply route to Russia, and challenge the Ottoman Empire, a key Central Powers. Ally. Gallipoli became a defining moment for both the Ottoman and Allied forces, known for its harsh combat conditions and high casualties. U.S. soldiers from the 18th Infantry, 1st Division, are shown taking a break in a devastated French town near Saint-Mihiel. This offensive, launched in September 1918, was one of the first significant independent actions by American forces during the war and played a key role in weakening German lines. A Turkish cannon being transported to the front during the Gallipoli campaign highlights the constant need for resupply and reinforcement for Ottoman forces as they faced intense Allied offensives. On May 28, 1918, American troops from the 28th Infantry Regiment advanced over a trench during the Battle of Cantigny in France. This operation, aimed at reclaiming territory from German forces, marked a significant moment for the newly arrived U.S. forces, testing their combat readiness. German reserves being transported to the front in trucks illustrate the importance of rapid troop mobilization during the war. This logistical efficiency was crucial for maintaining momentum and ensuring that frontline units were reinforced during critical moments in battle. In 1916, Canadian Minister of Defense Sir Sam Hughes, along with other observers, inspected the wreckage. Inaras Frante. The devastation in Arras symbolized the high human and material costs of the conflict, as Canadian troops played a significant role in several key battles on the Western Front. Similarly, wounded soldiers were transported to ambulances during the Allied advance on Lens, France, where heavy fighting resulted in numerous casualties as both sides struggled for control of this strategic location. In late October 1917, French forces took cover in a shell hole during the offensive to recapture the Chemin des Dames. After months of fierce fighting and heavy losses, the French managed to reclaim this important ridge, which had been a critical and hotly contested position throughout the war. In mid-August 1914, German troops received rations from a field supply vehicle while advancing toward Brussels. The swift German offensive aimed to occupy Brussels as part of a larger strategy to secure key cities and further their territorial gains. In March 1918, soldiers from Company K, 165th Infantry, of the famed 69th Regiment, marched through St. Clement, France. Known as the Old Rainbow Division, this unit played a significant role in several key operations as they moved toward the front. On October 9, 1915, Austrian troops captured Belgrade, positioning themselves strategically along the Danube River. The occupation of Belgrade was part of a series of offensives aimed at destabilizing and controlling Serbia, a key ally of the Allied forces in the Balkans. In the Somme region of France, American soldiers from the 27th Division advanced through a field tangled with barbed wire, a vivid reminder of the brutal fighting that characterized the area. The Somme, known for intense battles and frequent engagements, was one of the most heavily contested regions during the war. After the signing of the armistice in 1918, American soldiers celebrated the end of hostilities, relieved to leave the battlefields behind. The emotional moment marked the conclusion of years of relentless combat, offering hope for peace and a fresh start. In November 1918, soldiers from New York set up a Liberty Bell in Cambrai, France, as a symbol of the armistice and the promise of a peaceful future. Cambrai, once the site of some of the most brutal battles of the war, transformed into a place of celebration following the signing of the armistice. On November 11, 1918, the streets of London were similarly filled with jubilation as a crowd gathered in front of Buckingham Palace to rejoice in the armistice that brought an end to World War I. After more than 4 grueling years of conflict, the signing marked the return of peace and offered hope for a new beginning, a wave of relief sweeping over war-torn nations. At the same time, on the battlefield near Juvigny, France, foot soldiers marched alongside tanks, an innovation still relatively new to warfare. These formidable machines were designed to break through enemy defenses more effectively than infantry alone, supporting French troops as they faced fierce resistance. The use of tanks marked a significant shift in military strategy, proving invaluable in overcoming the entrenched warfare that had defined much of the conflict. In a solemn moment, soldiers gathered at a military funeral to honor the victims of a German air raid, which included 2 Canadian nurses. This attack, like many others, did not discriminate between soldiers and medical personnel, targeting those whose mission was to save lives. Between 1914 and 1918, such tragic ceremonies became heartbreakingly routine, underscoring the widespread devastation that defined the war. Amid the chaos and destruction, moments of calm were rare but cherished. A group of Allied soldiers shared one of these fleeting moments in a crater left by an explosion, gathering for a meal in France. For soldiers enduring the relentless strain of war, these brief respites provided not only physical relief, but also a crucial sense of camaraderie and humanity during one of the darkest chapters of the early 20th century.